In honor of St. Patrick's Day, which is coming up really soon here, I've got several recipes for you, which feature one of my favorite ingredients, the humble potato. I've got some delicious potato pancakes for you, as well as some Irish stew. And then I'm going to show you the soda bread to go along with that. And no list of Irish recipes would be complete without a good cottage pie. I'm a huge fan of shepherd's pie, cottage pie. And then to round out my list, I'm including a hearty clam chowder, which in my mind is very Irish. It might not be a traditional fish stew, but it does have those potatoes and then the briny and saltiness from the sea. Welcome to the Freeze Dried Foodie, where you'll find delicious recipes using freeze-dried ingredients. Now, it doesn't really matter what brand you have. So many of us have this type of food on our shelves. On this channel, I'll show you how I cook with mine. All right, for the first recipe I'm going to show you today, I've got some loaded potato pancakes. This is actually one of my husband's very favorite side dishes. He absolutely loves these. So if you're tired of just plain old mashed potatoes, here's an idea of something you could try. Really change things up a bit. Of course, for the base, it's going to be mashed potato flakes. You could use any brand. And then I'm just loading them up with delicious things like cheese and butter, sour cream. These are so tasty. I think you're going to love them. You're going to start with a cup of our mashed potatoes. And to that, you will add some instant milk powder, some Parmesan cheese. This is a half a cup of pepper jack. I've got sour cream powder. I've got the scrambled eggs for the binder, like I mentioned. That is butter powder. Here comes the corn starch. And y'all, the green onions are so good in this recipe. Don't skip those. The seasonings are completely up to you. I like Chef's Choice garlic powder and salt and pepper. I end up adding some salt later, but that's up to you. Now the panko breadcrumbs, I use this as a coating on the outside of the potato pancake. They are optional. I do recommend them. I think they add a really nice crunch when you fry these up. But if you're trying to stay gluten-free, you can just eliminate that altogether. You don't need them in order to have a crunchy mashed potato pancake. When you're ready to prepare them, all you have to do is remove your oxygen absorber and then take out those panko breadcrumbs if you included those in your jar. And you can just set those to the side because we'll use those later on. All right, and since you have the seasonings and all of the things kind of layered and they're not really mixed in, go ahead and give your mashed potatoes a good mixing so that everything incorporates, including the cornstarch and the seasonings. And then you'll add a cup and a half of hot water. That was just very hot water from the tap. I think that adding the hot water will help the binding process start to happen. So that cheese will kind of start to melt and that will help to bind everything together. Now it's very important that this mixture is not liquidy. You want this to be a very dry mixture, because it needs to turn into a pancake that will stay together. These are not going to be as moist as regular mashed potatoes that you would serve. These need to be very dry, but not too dry. I end up adding a couple of tablespoons more of water because I had some dry patches of powder at the bottom of my bowl, but don't add too much. If it's too liquid, your potato pancakes will not hold together when you fry them. So it's really important that they stay pretty good and dry. Now this is where I had to add some salt because I realized I had forgotten to add salt before. The Chef's Choice does have some salt in it, but I like my mashed potatoes rather salty, so I added some more. And of course, it's up to you. When it's time to make the potato pancakes, I just use my ice cream scooper. Of course, you could use a measuring cup or whatever you like to use, but this recipe yields 6 potato pancakes, and each potato pancake is half of a cup. I love that ice cream scooper. I use it for muffins, ice cream, pancakes, evidently. I found it at the Goodwill and it was a great buy. And you just want to shape these, give them a little pat and get them in, the shape of a pancake, a circle shape. And just make sure that your edges don't crack. If your edges start to crack, kind of push them back together. See, they need to be about a half an inch thick. You don't want to get these too thin. You want them to be a pretty good thickness so that they don't fall apart when you fry them in the oil. Get everybody taken care of there. Yeah. And once everybody's in the right shape, you can get out your panko breadcrumbs. Just put those in a little bowl and I'll show you why. So you're going to gently put your potato pancake in and just barely give it a pat, a tap. Not even, don't push it in there. It's just barely a pat. And then you give it a shake and it coats the sides for you. And that's what you do to all of them. One side, pat, pat, pat. The other side, pat, pat, pat. Give it a shake and it'll get the sides for you. So there's plenty of breadcrumbs to coat all 6. I have some left over here, but one of those I'm just going to fry without the coating so you can see what it looks like. Then I'm going to take an iron skillet and preheat it on medium heat for probably 5 to 7 minutes. Get it really good and hot, and then I'm going to add enough avocado oil to coat the bottom of the pan. I was trying to show my daughter to be super careful when you put these in the oil and you'll be fine. And then I gave it a really good splatter. Whew. Anyway, so be careful when you put those in there. I cooked on a medium heat and just kind of moved them around a little bit. But each side needs to cook for about 3 minutes. I ended up turning the heat down just a tad. It ended up at 4 out of 10 on my stove. And then 3 minutes later, you're going to flip them over. I did the 2 spatula method for the flip, but you flip however you want to flip. And just be careful because the oil is really hot. And another 3 minutes on the other side, and then they should be ready. Now this first one, it's hard to tell a difference, isn't it? This first one, that's the one that did not have the panko breadcrumbs. And when we went to eat, my husband couldn't tell either, and he ended up accidentally eating most of the one I was going to show you without the panko breadcrumbs. But anyway, he just said they're both really good. So I ended up putting them on a tray and or on a rack and putting them in the oven to stay warm. So there you go. You're going to have 6 potato pancakes, and that's what they look like on their own. And yeah, you hear that sound? It's a nice crunch. And just look at the interior here. That is going to be a pillowy, white, soft interior. Your cheese will have melted. Look at those green onions. Oh my goodness, y'all. It's so yummy. Yeah, really good and crunchy. And here's the rest of that potato pancake that did not have the panko crumb coating. See, it's still nice and crispy on the outside. Can you hear that? It's nice. It's a nice crunchy exterior. Either way, I really do like the panko, but both ways it's delicious. We had it twice this week, once with steak, once with chicken. All right, for our second recipe of the day, I'm going to show you how I make my Irish stew. There's a few reasons why I like this recipe so much. One of them is just the simplicity of the ingredients. You got some steak bites, some potatoes, carrots, supporting vegetables, and then another reason I like it so much is the flavor of the broth that it comes in. Man, this is just so tasty. And I'm also going to show you a bonus recipe for the Irish soda bread that complements this so well. I'm starting with just a pint-and-a-half jar because I only wanted 2 or 3 servings. We got 3 servings out of this, but I ran out of room in my jar. So I figured out that if you want to include the mushrooms, use a quart jar. Now, mushrooms are not traditional in an Irish stew, but I like them. I like to add them, but they're optional. Start with some beef dices and add some carrots to that. You only need about 3 tablespoons. Our carrots are very sweet and you don't want them to take over the dish. There's a good amount of freeze-dried potatoes in there and just a few onions and some celery to really complement those flavors. Our seasonings are very simple. I've got rosemary and thyme in there. I actually ran out of my dried rosemary. That's fresh rosemary from my garden, but y'all use the dried for your jar. Now, these mushrooms, sadly, they didn't make it into the jar, but I will add them later on in the video. I needed to have room for the sauce powders. I got a snack baggie, and into that I put the tomato powder, some flour, and some beef bouillon, as well as some Espanol sauce. Now, if you don't have our Espanol sauce, you can leave that out. Or better yet, I have a copycat recipe for that on my channel, and I'll link to that below. So seal up that bag and put that in the top of your jar. I'll include a couple of bay leaves. Here's the oxygen absorber. But how about that? That's a really nice jar, isn't it? Beautiful layers. So this is what you would store on your pantry shelf. I just love having meals like this waiting for me in my pantry. It is so convenient for our busy lives. Also, I love cooking with freeze-dried food because once you open a can of those potatoes or a can of that beef or the carrots, you have an entire year to use up the contents of the can. So it has really helped me eliminate food waste in our home. And when you would like to prepare this, just get out a large soup pot. Go ahead and remove those bay leaves. We'll add those back in a minute. And set that baggie to the side. Empty the contents of your jar into your soup pot. There go those mushrooms. And then just start with 1.5 cups of water. Now you might be thinking, Kareth, that's not enough water to refresh these ingredients and get the beef tender. And you'd be right, that is not enough water. All I'm doing here really is I'm hydrating those vegetables just a little bit so that I can saute them without burning them. I'm trying to build flavors here, so I figured out that I can get really great flavor with these ingredients if I saute them first. So that 1.5 cups of water, you'll bring it to a boil, and it doesn't need to cook but for maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and that water will evaporate off and you'll pretty much have a dry pan at this point. But those veggies will have absorbed enough water to where you can saute them and they won't burn on you. I'm going to use some avocado oil here. I started with 2 tablespoons and I ended up adding 1/3 later on. I like avocado oil because number 1, it's neutral flavored, and number 2, it's got a high smoke point. To that, you're going to add that baggie of powders, and what we're doing here is we're sauteing or toasting that flour and that tomato powder. Raw flour does not taste good. You don't want to have raw flour in your sauce. But if you toast that flour in the oil, you're going to have wonderfully flavored sauce. So after you kind of get that tomato powder and that flour absorbed in that oil, you can just kind of combine everything. And it will start to saute. Now you're going to develop some fond on the bottom of your pot, and that's great. That's wonderful. Don't worry about it. It will come up whenever we add some liquid to the pot. That is going to give your dish fantastic flavor. And you don't need to saute that very long, maybe 5 or 6 minutes, something like that. You'll be smelling some wonderful aromas in your kitchen. And you can go ahead and add about 3 cups of water. Now, if you would like to substitute a cup of stout or Guinness in here, you can do that. Be sure to scrape up the fond off of the bottom of the pot. You want all those bits in your sauce, right? It will give your broth great flavor. So go ahead and cover that and bring it up to a boil. Don't forget your bay leaves like I did. Cover that and turn down your heat and simmer it for about 15 minutes. After that time, you can remove the lid and continue to simmer for an additional 15 minutes. I just came along and gave it a stir every probably 5 minutes or so. It's not fussy, it doesn't really stick to the bottom, and after a while you'll notice that the sauce color has deepened and it gets really nice and glossy. Go ahead and give it a taste. If you'll remember, I didn't add any salt and pepper at the beginning, mainly because that beef bouillon has some salt in it. But I think it does need some salt, so just do that to taste. I probably added about 1/4 teaspoon. Go ahead and fish out your bay leaves, and it's ready to serve up. Just look at that wonderful stew. You'll be amazed at how tender the beef dices get when you cook them long enough. Those carrots are perfect, the potatoes are great. It's just a wonderful stew. And our favorite thing to serve this with is a good Irish soda bread with copious amounts of Kerrygold butter on it. That's just the way you do it. So isn't that beautiful? Now, because Thrive Life beef dices are kind of small, and the potatoes are small, and the carrots are small, you don't get those good big chunks that you usually see in an Irish stew, but you are going to get that same wonderful flavor. And I thought, I'm showing you this beautiful stew that we only ever eat with our Irish soda bread. And I thought, it's kind of mean to show you the stew and the bread and not give you the recipe. So I decided, all right, I'll film this and show everybody how I make my soda bread. Now, I've made both gluten-free and regular all-purpose soda bread. Both of them always work. This is not a difficult bread. There's no kneading, there's no proofing. The soda is what makes it rise. So let me show you. This is my mom's recipe, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in a jar to show you that you could store this next to your stew. You could store your soda bread in the pantry next to your stew. So anytime you want to make the stew, you could just get out a jar of the soda bread as well and have them together. Very simple ingredients. This is exactly my mom's recipe. She used both soda and baking powder in her recipe, and that acts as the leavening agent. She also put a little bit of egg in hers, and I think it helps with the structure and with the rise a little bit. So that is what you could store on your pantry shelf. And let me show you how to put it together. It's very easy. Dump your ingredients into a bowl. That's a large bowl. That was my Mama Helen's bowl, my favorite bowl. Stir your ingredients a little bit to combine them. And if you're using a gluten-free flour like I am here, it's 1 cup of water. If you're using all-purpose regular flour, it's 3/4 cup of water. That's the only difference in the recipe. The rest of it's exactly the same. And that's all there is to it. You stir it together, and you're going to let it sit while you preheat your oven. Gluten-free flour needs to hydrate a little bit. So when your oven is ready, flour your surface and turn your dough to get all sides of it floured, just so you can handle it really. And all you have to do is shape it into a kind of a circle. That's it. There's no kneading. I just plopped it on some parchment paper in the shape of a circle, that's all. You have to cut into it, you have to cut across, and that really helps the bread cook evenly on the inside. And then you cut the fairy holes, and that's going to ensure an even bake. Put the parchment paper into the Dutch oven, or just any container that has a lid, and it needs to bake at 425 for about 25 minutes with the lid on, and then about 15 minutes with the lid off. And that's what you have at the end of your cook time. That parchment paper acts as a sleeve, and you can carefully lift it out. Let it cool until you can handle it. It's a really nice crust. So it's got a great crusty outside and a really tender inside. If you haven't tried soda bread, I hope you will give this a try. It's almost a no-fail recipe. It's super easy. Just look at that. Isn't it beautiful? It's a nice tender crumb. So I wanted to show you just kind of a close-up of what these slices look like. Lovely crust. And then watch how tender this is. It's nice and moist. It's a tight crumb, but it is not tough. And yes, like I said, copious amounts of salted Kerrygold butter. This is how you have to eat it. It's so good. I hope you'll give this a try. And please let me know what you think in the comments. All right, let's get back to the stew. I sometimes pile stew on my bread and eat it like that. And then sometimes I dunk the bread in the stew, or tear off chunks of bread and put it in the stew. Any way you want to do it's great, but those two things pair so well together. They really do belong together. So there you have it, guys. My Irish stew with my Irish soda bread. Hey y'all, real quick, I wanted to tell you about my cookbooks. If you are enjoying my recipes and you love meals in jars, you should know about my cookbooks. I've got a couple of them for sale. I have the paperbacks available on Amazon, as well as the Kindle versions. And then if you just want a digital version, I have those on my website. You can download that to multiple devices. Even though I use Thrive Life ingredients in most of my recipes, it doesn't matter. You can use whatever brand you like, including your own home freeze-dried ingredients. All right, back to the recipe. I am making a recipe for shepherd's pie as a meal in a jar. It's a just add water recipe, and y'all, it's so yummy. This is based on my mom's recipe for shepherd's pie. I think this is really cottage pie because there's not lamb in here. I'm using ground beef, so it's probably really a cottage pie. But anyway, it's like a beefy, veggie, gravy-filled, saucy bottom, and then a mashed potato topping. And I'm putting some cheese in the mashed potatoes. So it's going to be really super yummy. My seasonings this time are really pretty simple. There's several of them, but I think you probably have most of those seasonings in your pantry. If you don't have the Worcestershire powder, then you can just add fresh Worcestershire sauce when you make this. Let me show you how I put it together. I needed 4 servings, so I'm using a quart-sized jar. You could totally cut this down to 2 servings and put this in a pint-sized jar. I like the beef if it's been pulsed in the blender and broken up a bit. I don't like the pellets that it comes in the can, so I always put it in the blender, and the texture's much better. I like the mouth feel better. The seasonings I'm going to put in with the beef are seasonings that I want to dry saute when I cook this. I'll show you. It's not complicated. It's really easy to do, but these are the seasonings that you're going to put in with your beef, and we'll cook them in some oil for just a couple of minutes to bring out the flavor, and then we'll add the vegetables, okay? I like to keep the vegetables separate here. I put them in a plastic baggie so we can add them later. All right, so I like in my shepherd's pie corn, peas, carrots, and onions, but it's totally up to you. Some people don't like corn in their shepherd's pie, so I mean, if you don't want that in there, just leave it out. I actually ran out of the chopped onions. I was at the very bottom of my can and I didn't want to open a new one, so I added some red onions with that. That's the LiteHouse brand of red onions, but you can just use all Thrivalist chopped onions there. I also am going to add a 1/4 cup of the Thrivalist Espanol sauce. If you don't have Thrivalist's Espanol sauce, I've got a copycat recipe on my channel. I'll link to that below for you. So you can seal up that baggie, put it in an oxygen absorber. I have room at the top of my jar. I mean, you could add some more vegetables in here if you want, or you could even try to put this in a smaller jar. It might work in a 24-ounce jar. All right, let's work on the mashed potatoes. This I am putting in a 24-ounce jar. It's 2 cups of the instant mashed potato flakes. You can use Thrivalist or whatever brand you like. And then to that, I'm going to make the mashed potatoes delicious by adding some sauce powder. So I've got butter powder, sour cream powder, and you can either use milk powder or heavy cream powder. I've got heavy cream powder in here. So that's going to make the mashed potatoes nice and creamy. And then we need to season them up because it's just potato flakes that comes in that can. So you have to add the seasonings. I'm using salt, pepper, and then a little bit of garlic powder and some green onions. But it's totally up to you. Leave out the garlic powder if you don't like that. I am going to add cheddar and parmesan into the mashed potatoes themselves. My mom always topped the mashed potatoes with the cheese, but I'm putting the cheese in the potatoes and I blend it up first so it melts immediately when it hits the boiling water. There's my oxygen absorber. So there is my mashed potato jar right there with the cheese in it. So these are the 2 jars that you could store on your pantry shelf. And with those jars, you'll want to include the cooking instructions. And then when you're ready to prepare this, you'll need to get out a couple of different pans. I like to use a large skillet for the beef and then a medium pot for the mashed potatoes. First thing you do is you add some oil to the bottom of the skillet. A couple tablespoons of avocado oil or some sort of neutral flavored oil, or butter. You could use butter. And go ahead and turn your heat on to medium. And then after your pan and your oil is good and hot, you'll open up your jar, set that veggie baggie to the side. We'll add that in a minute. First thing you want to add to the skillet is the beef mixture. Okay, so you've got seasonings down in there and the beef. And what I like to do is just dry saute these seasonings and that beef in the oil. And I call it dry saute just because it's freeze-dried ingredients and we haven't added the water yet. But what I'm really doing is sauteing those seasonings in the hot oil. A lot of them are fat soluble. The flavor just comes alive when they hit the heat and the oil. That will just bring out better flavor in your dish. After about 2 minutes, you need to add 3 cups of water, and then you can add the veggie baggie. If you just put all the vegetables in with the oil, I think they would just burn. So anyway, I like to keep them separate and add the veggies after I've added the water. Give that all a really good stir, and then you're going to want to bring this to a boil over probably about a medium heat. Meanwhile, you can get some water on to boil for the mashed potatoes. When your beef mixture has come to a boil, go ahead and give it another stir. Make sure nothing's sticking, and you can reduce that heat to probably medium-low. I left mine on a 4 out of 10 on my stove, and it needs to simmer for probably 10 to 15 minutes. I simmered mine for 15 minutes. All right, meanwhile, my mashed potato pan, the water back there has come to a boil, and I'm going to add my mashed potato jar to it. So I turned off the heat, and in goes the contents of the jar. And all you need to do is stir it really well, and that's it. I mean, that is very simple. See why I blended the cheddar though? It's because it melts immediately when it hits that boiling water. If I hadn't blended the cheddar, it would not have enough time to refresh, and you would have crunchy bits of cheese in there. Now, you could always keep it separate and hydrate it separately, but this is the fastest and easiest way, and I like to do it this way. Okay, just put a lid on that and set it to the side. It's ready. And back to the filling. So it's been about 5 minutes of simmering with the lid off. You can tell that that sauce is thickening up, and I went ahead and I put a lid on this for the next 5 minutes just because I wanted to make sure that the corn and the peas and the beef had access to that liquid before it cooked off, to make sure that they were good and rehydrated. So I let that go for about 5 minutes with the lid on. And then I checked on it again and thought, yeah, that looks good. The peas look like they have plumped up, and the corn too. So I thought, yeah, that's probably enough time of having that lid on there. And then I simmered it for another 5 minutes or so. And this is kind of the thickness that I like for the filling of my shepherd's pie or my cottage pie. But that's up to you. If you want it thicker, just let it go a few more minutes. Go ahead and give it a taste, adjust your seasonings. I thought mine was perfect. I didn't need to add anything. And then I went ahead and added this to a prepared casserole dish. That's an 8-inch casserole dish. It might be a 10-inch actually. We'll call it 9, a 9-inch casserole dish. And then you need to dollop your potatoes on the top of the filling. Now, y'all, this is where I messed up, okay? I looked at my potatoes and I thought, oh my gosh, they're too thick. And I added liquid to them, but I added too much. And then they were just kind of too liquidy. It was like, I shouldn't have done that. So don't be like me. Just leave it the way it is and it will be fine. Now, this tasted great, but it wasn't the texture that I had wanted. But anyway, you can kind of rough up the top of your potatoes and then stick those in the oven. You can either bake this at 375 for about 15 minutes, or you can broil it for 5 minutes. I mean, everything is cooked in there. I was in a hurry, so all I did was broil mine for 5 minutes because we needed to eat and go. The top will get nice and browned, and that parmesan and the cheese that's in there helps it to just look so pretty. I went ahead and dished that up. Now, if you want a shepherd's pie or a cottage pie that is more like something that's drier, and then you can slice it and put it on a dish, then you need to let your filling boil a little bit longer and just cook off some more of that liquid. And also just leave your potatoes alone and don't add the extra liquid to the potatoes. Also, if you bake it in the oven for about 15 minutes, it will dry out a little bit more. But y'all, this was absolutely delicious. Super, super tasty. I'm really thrilled with the way it came out. It is probably the best tasting filling for a shepherd's pie that I've ever had. Really, it's just that good. For our final recipe today, I'm going to be showing you my creamy clam chowder. It's super delicious. It's basically my mom's potato soup recipe with the addition of clams, and then I do change up the seasoning some. When I had this when I was a child, I never liked it. And the reason is because I thought that the clams had a really weird texture. and I just didn't enjoy it. Okay, fast forward. Now I'm an adult and I have figured out a way to make the texture of the clams themselves a little bit more appealing. And even though this recipe is not technically Irish, it does feature potatoes, so I thought it belonged here. Hope you enjoy it. I just needed a couple of servings. We actually got 3 servings out of this, so I'm going to use a pint-sized jar. And into the jar, I'm going to start with a cup of our potato dices. And then to fill in those gaps and spaces, I'm going to go ahead and add the bechamel sauce. I have a copycat recipe on my channel. I'll link to that below if you need that. And then some extra heavy cream powder. And then I do like to give it a shaky just to settle those powders and make some more room in the jar. You need a good amount of celery here, and if I were you, I would blitz that in the blender one time to get it nice and crushed up. And then in goes some chopped onions, a little bit of garlic, and some diced carrots. That's just what my mom always put in hers: celery, onions, and a little bit of carrot. Now, to help to thicken, I'm adding some mashed potato flakes. And then along with some butter powder, which, I mean, I love butter flavor and everything, so I'm going to put some butter powder in here. I'm adding some Worcestershire powder because my mom always added a dash of Worcestershire sauce to her clam chowder at the end of the cooking time. So I'm just going to add that in there. And just a little bit of seasoning is really all you need. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and then I put some Chef's Choice in there. That's an all-purpose seasoning. I like to add a couple of bay leaves in there, and then that's all there is to this jar. And at this point, it's pretty much just a potato soup jar. If you think about it, that's pretty much all that's in there. So you will have to store the canned clams and some shelf-stable bacon bits next to your jar. Not everybody loves the bacon, but boy, I do, so I highly recommend it. When you're ready to make this, you will need to get out a medium-sized pot, and let's start with the bacon. This is how I like to develop the base flavor. Okay, so I get a tablespoon of butter, melt it in there, and then add that package of the shelf-stable bacon. What I'm wanting to do is render out the fat. And I like to do this first because I get a really nice smoky flavor into the pot from the bacon, and I think it's great in the chowder. Once your bacon gets nice and frothy, it will be good and crispy. You can take that bacon out, set it to the side, and we'll use it as a topping. But leave the rendered fat in there in that butter. And to that, we're going to add the liquid from the cans of clams, but not the clams themselves. We are going to wait and add those at the end of cooking so they don't get tough. So that's probably about a half a cup of liquid per can that went in there. So right now we've got about a cup of liquid in, and then we're going to add the contents of the jar. Then we're going to add more liquid to it. Okay, so you need a total of about 3 cups of liquid. Here comes 1 more cup of clam juice. I just found that in the regular grocery store next to the clams, like in the tuna section. And then I'm adding 1 more cup of water. So if you don't buy the clam juice, the bottled clam juice, just add 2 cups of water right there. That's fine as well. You'll want to stir that, bring it to a boil over probably medium heat. And then once you reach a boil, you'll need to crank down your heat, reduce that heat to probably medium-low or so, and just simmer it until your veggies are tender. That'll take about 12 minutes for those carrots to get nice and tender. Just stir it every once in a while, but you'll notice it thickens and it gets a little darker as it cooks. So now's a great time to add those canned clams. We need to heat those through. You'll just stir those in, get them nice and hot. At this point in time, I like to add a little bit of, it's optional, but a little bit of heavy cream, just fresh heavy cream. I think fresh ingredients help to take these recipes over the top, make them even better. Don't worry if you don't have that. It doesn't need it to be delicious. It's good without it, but I do like the extra cream in there. Go ahead and fish out your bay leaves and give this a taste. You can adjust your seasonings at this point. Mine was perfect. And if you'll notice, as I serve this up, the consistency of the soup, it's nice and thick. It's not too thick, but it's definitely not thin. It's just a perfect consistency because of those mashed potato flakes and that bechamel sauce we put in there. So you can top your chowder with the crispy bacon, some fresh chives, and those oyster crackers. That's how my mom always served this, was with oyster crackers. Gosh, y'all, isn't it gorgeous? Just look at that chowder. I mean, you can definitely see the clams in there, the potatoes, those gorgeous little pops of orange from the carrots. I just think it's beautiful. And even more than that, it's fantastic. It's, oh, so delicious. Well, thank you for spending part of your day with me today. I always appreciate that. I appreciate your views and your comments and any engagement with my channel. Y'all are really the best. I hope you find my recipes to be delicious and my ideas for cooking with your food stores to be helpful to you. I know a lot of us are pretty shocked at the prices of groceries at the store these days, and we're turning to our food stores and our pantries in order to bring delicious meals to the table. Sometimes it can be a bit intimidating learning to cook with the freeze-dried food you have on your shelves. So that's what my channel is here for. I hope you find it useful. I have been traveling some and I just didn't have time to get into the kitchen and create a new recipe for you. So it's always kind of fun for me to do these favorites types of videos because I know some of you have not seen these videos. They're older, they're from years ago, and so it helps me to kind of feature some of my older videos for my new subscribers. In the past, I've done like favorite breakfast items or favorite soups, but these are always really fun for me to do. I enjoy this type of video. I try to put the recipes down below in the description box, but YouTube has like a maximum number of characters that they allow in their description boxes. And if I tried to write 5 recipes in that amount, I mean, I just can't do it. It won't all fit. So what I will do is I'll put, hopefully I will be able to fit a couple of them down there, and then I will link to the other 3. I will also include links for my cookbooks and my cook booklets, and I do have those in Kindle form now if you prefer your recipes on your Kindle. I also like to include my shopping links down below. Of course, my beloved Thrivalist is no longer, but I am an affiliate for a few other freeze-dried food companies, and I have those recommendations down below. All right, now it's time for our verse of the day. I like to do a scripture verse of the day at the end of my videos, and today's verse comes from 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 3, and it reads, "But the Lord is faithful, who will strengthen and guard you from the evil one." Praise the Lord for that. All right, I hope y'all have a wonderful day, a fantastic week, and until next time, y'all take care and keep thriving.